Good morning, Aberdeen. It is 7:36 a.m. here on Aberdeen Beach. I'm sat in the fishing village of Fitty with community body doubling going on right now as I record this. I hadn't anticipated recording another intro because I had meant to put out the last episode as one episode. So this is part 2. I completely lied on social media and said it's because it's a celebration of 2 years since getting diagnosed. So that's why there's 2 episodes. And that is a complete lie. It is just because all of the interviews in inverted commas, which are not interviews at all, they're just blethers, went on too long. I chopped them to bits. I cannot bear to chop any more out. And I couldn't bear to put out a longer episode than I already did. So this is part 2. If you've not already listened to part 1, the link will be in the blurb of this episode to have a listen to that. This is, a very special 2-parter. My own ADHD safari. Gratitude to community legend Rachel for the whole safari element. It's all because I just hate the J word unless it's used in the actual context of from getting to A to B. So this is my ADHD safari that I've been documenting and getting reflections from nearest and dearest about how things look 2 years on from getting diagnosed. I'm very aware indeed of how difficult it is to obtain an ADHD diagnosis. That is quite literally what I'm doing here. I'm trying to rally the troops, to unite us, to bring us all together so that we can push for change, so that others don't have to wait so long to get the answers to the most obvious questions in their lives, this diagnosis that was staring us right in the face the whole time. But I realised that many can't. I also realised that not everybody wants a medical diagnosis. People might not feel that they need a piece of paper and they don't want to take medication. And that's totally fine too. We are all on our own individual safaris, and ADHD presents differently in every single one of us. So self-diagnosis is valid. ADHD is real. I hope you enjoy the final instalment of my 2-year diagnosis reflections. These are from the people that are not just close to me in my life, but they're also people that are very much core team ADHD AF, about to take us to the next chapter, which I cannot wait to share with you very soon. There are some very triggering topics covered. They're also kind of made light of, but that is not because they're funny. It is a coping strategy, that gallows humour that many of us know all too well. I am not a doctor, therapist or coach. I am not trained or even emotionally equipped to offer any advice or support. I am just sharing my own experiences as I am only an expert of them. I hope that you find some validation or perhaps even some useful information or some inspiration to join the fight for change, because it's so desperately needed. So in this episode, I will absolutely swear like a sailor. I'm sorry, I don't do it on purpose. I know that it's neither professional nor ladylike, but I am absolutely neither of those things. So yeah, it's a bit sweary. Just to be serious for 1 second, I try and avoid it at all costs, but sometimes it's necessary. I just have to say that truthfully, ADHD diagnosis not only changed, but actually saved my life. And that's what I want for others. I want everyone to be able to access the support and not have to suffer anymore. I really believe that together we can make change happen. Let's dive into these last couple of precious blethers with absolute legends. And at the end, my impulsivity has led to a surprise. Seriously. It's Saturday morning. Nicole is in a blue bath and Ali is in bed. And we are sat here trying to figure out how to cram this all into 10 minutes. What could possibly go wrong? The naked hyperverbal one. Let's start with you.
Okay, Laura, what hasn't changed since diagnosis? Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about how life-changing it is, but what has stayed the same?
I still have ADHD. Medication really helped with my anxiety. It helped clear the noise in my brain. It stops the choice paralysis and all of the overwhelming thoughts that stood in my way. But I do still have ADHD. I do still have the RSD. I know I've talked a lot about that. I think I should have the crown queen of RSD, to be honest with you. What I've talked about so much is that you need to put systems in place to support yourself, because you accept that the same struggles are going to trip you up time and time again. And just this week, I messed up. So I've got a whole system where if something really triggers me, if something really upsets me, I now have the awareness that my perception of it might not be the rejection that I feel. Yeah. It might not be as full on as I think it is. And so I would never say overreact, but it's like, because your feelings are your feelings and they're valid, whatever. But it's about the reaction and the responsibility that we all have to the people in our lives and to ourselves to not burn down our whole lives, right? By reacting to something without thinking. And this week, I reacted without thinking about something, and it shook me a bit, and it caused me a bit of shame. But what happened within that was like, okay, you know better than this, and actually look at all the times that you have put your system in place to stop yourself doing this. Okay, you've fallen down, and we will fall down because we've still got it. But as soon as I clocked it, I went, oh shit, I can't believe I just done that. That tripped me up again. Oh, well, I'm really sorry that I reacted without thinking. I don't do that anymore, but I just fell down that day. So yeah, the emotional side of it is something that I have to work daily still, and always will, to manage and keep on top of, to be able to maintain good relationships, basically.
Yeah. And you know, we've talked about this. I have to say it without the plug, but once you know why you are like this, there's no other way to phrase it. Once you know,
joke is how many plugs of Nicole's Edinburgh Fringe show can she get into every single conversation?
It's impossible. If someone can give me an alternate phrase that means the same thing, please.
Plug away.
It's
I'm
so
looking
cringe.
forward to the next installment at Edinburgh Fringe this year.
Me too. I have to write it. But as you're saying this, I'm literally thinking like, yeah, because you know why? Because when you don't know what is wrong with you, when you don't even know that it's ADHD, you don't even have the tiniest concept of how to look into that, of how to like see yourself from the outside. You're just so consumed on the inside. So like, what growth to be able to still experience that symptom, which, I mean, 50 years on from knowing that you have ADHD, you will still be experiencing symptoms because that's how it is.
Yes. But, and they will fluctuate with the hormones, of course, as we now know. Yeah.
And like with your life circumstances and what's going on and all that, it's, you know, every day is different. But honestly, what a blessing to be able to pull yourself back and not spiral. And when I say you, I mean I. And when I say I mean probably everyone listening. The way that we would tend to. And something that's like this little niggly thing that happened truly does burn the house down.
Yeah, it could have burned the whole fucking house down. Yeah,
literally.
Over
but
nothing.
Instead, you have a moment,
exactly.
and that is magic.
So that's how it answers the question in two ways. Because what has changed is that I have the awareness, but what has stayed the same is that I still have it.
That still happens,
and it's working on it daily. Daily work. Daily awareness, daily responsibility, accountability, and just holding your hands up when you fall down, because the people involved all know what I'm like and that I'm ADHD AF, but that doesn't give me a free pass. I still have to say, I'm sorry I did that. That was, I was really silly. My brain went down in a spiral.
And a little bit of compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
Because I know you, like me, the worst part is the internal self monologue that we do not need to repeat because everyone hears it. Of how you feel afterward. And so, you know, with this thing you're discussing, like, you had a moment of that, but it didn't then consume you and derail the rest of your day, week, life, month.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a moment. And that, I mean, there is no price point for me that I wouldn't pay for that opportunity to just not hate myself because I made a mistake.
Yeah.
That is life-changing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Right. We're going to go on to me asking you a question because we've already probably gone over time and I've forgotten what I said I was going to ask you. So
I forgot what you were going to ask me. So it's going to be so new.
Properly got to know you on the Too Much tour. And so far you have been at every live show that has ever happened. And I hope you will be forevermore.
I will always be.
But so really it's been like a proper 8 months of really getting to know each other properly.
Yeah.
What are your reflections? What do you think has changed in that time?
The first thing that jumps out to me, I mean, is that your not confidence in yourself as a person. I don't think that, not that that hasn't changed, but that's the first thing I think, but your confidence in like, I don't know, a less gimmicky way to phrase this, in like what you have to offer in ADHD AF to the community, to the wider public, what you can accomplish as an activist, what you can, all of those things. I think that has really, really blossomed from us doing like the first couple too much shows of being like, are these people really here to listen to like what is going on right now? Like you're going to do bingo and I'm going to like it was just like, what has happened to the ones that we did in December?
Yeah.
Which is like the same calendar year, which is wild, where it's like, okay, I have a message. I'm going to say it. I'm going to, it's this strong, that has really, really,
and I'm going to
really
do it in
grown.
PVC.
Yes, in PVC. So maybe that's the self-confidence part growing as well. But I also think like, especially now as you're doing it solo, which I know was not the original plan, there's been a lot of things you've had to grow in that I don't even think you anticipated having to grow in. And it was a lot in a short amount of time of like, how do you do all of these things? But something else that's really changed, I think, is you really having an understanding of what you can do and what you can't do.
One of the things that you talked about in your show, thinking, well, I could just kill myself, was like, as you say, it's like a spoonful of honey on a sore throat, right?
Yeah.
And actually, I've just realized a really, really huge thing is that an enormous amount of my bravery came from leaning on that crutch. Mm-hmm. Because it was literally like, oh, well, if it all goes tits up, like that's honestly,
I call it the soft place to land. It was like, well, worst case scenario in my back pocket.
I'll see you later.
Bye. Yeah.
And actually that's enormous that I've just realized literally this second that is probably the biggest change for me, because I don't think like that anymore. I really don't. I don't know when it stopped, but it used to be, at times when I was at my worst, it was every second of every day is just keep going because you can always just check out anytime,
Yeah.
And then it was when it was the big things. It was like, well, you can get through this day because, I mean, you might as well just roll the dice one more time because you can always just see you later anyway.
Right? It naturally stopped. And I think it's because I can't avoid saying it. Now that you know why we are like this, there's an answer to not have that be like the last thought that you think 30 times a day. Tell you what, makes a difference in how you exist.
Well, it really does, because I remember it was when I was speaking to a coach, ADHD coach, Catherine, ages ago. I remember that was part of our conversation. And I said, I'm not sure if this is the right word. And actually, I'm still not. But the whole thing, everything that I was doing was very nihilistic. It was just like complete and utter nihilism. It's like, let's fucking have it because it's the end. Let's go. That's really how I was thinking at that time. It's a funny old thing, really, that's what's going through your head whilst you laugh and joke and sound like a chipmunk and you're dressed head to toe in leopard print. But here we are.
Truly, like that to me is because when a lot of times, I think people want to hear a success story and that looks different for everybody. But for me, the biggest success of my life is that I don't tell myself 30 times a day that I should just kill myself. Like nothing will ever trump that for me. Nothing. That has been the biggest success of all things, of all processes in my life.
100%. And all because why you are like this. I have to say, we've talked too long already, but thank you so much for telling me all this from the bath. And thank you for everything, because your infectious energy, it just is everything that I need in life. And I think we could probably annoy a lot of people, but we don't annoy each other, and that's good.
Yeah, no, we don't, which is really impressive, because it could happen, but it really doesn't. So see what the future holds.
Let's see. It's early in the day yet. Let me move on to the wonderful Ali McDonald, Scary Fairy, who is in bed. Ali.
So my question from the community at this kind of 2-year milestone, what would your advice be for others at the start of their own safari? And I wonder as well if that doesn't just start from 2 years ago, but starts from that point of self-realization, self-diagnosis as well.
Yeah.
And however long that was before your official diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. So the awareness that I had ADHD, that light bulb moment or penny dropping, whatever moment, I can never remember this because I'm time blind AF, but it was either 2 or 3 years prior to going for the actual diagnosis. So it was a conversation with a friend who, to my eye, had it all together. So far removed from the stereotype of what I had in my head of what ADHD was. And so I was like, well, Christ, if you've got it, I definitely have. I guess it was imposter syndrome, actually. I guess it was just disbelief, but not, it was like, oh my God, like, are you joking? Like all of these things, you've just written down my personality in a list. Like, this can't be. But I think at that point, I didn't do enough research. Like I researched what the symptoms were and went tick, 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 but then just carried on with my day like, oh, great, I have an answer now. And it wasn't until 2 years later, however long it was, when I basically, as I've said in early episodes of the podcast, the language that I had then was that I had a nervous breakdown. And what I now realize is that it was when the perimenopausal hormones kicked in and it was proper serious burnout. I think a lot of the time when I'm speaking to people who are in their early 30s, like, should I get a diagnosis or not? Should I do this or not? And I'm like, well, it's completely up to you because self-diagnosis is valid. And if you feel that works for you, then great. But from my perspective, I would hate for anybody to have to get to that point, get to that absolute rock bottom breaking point if they didn't have to. My advice would be to do a lot of research. If you're as furious about the statistics and safety to the lives of other ADHDers like yourself, and the lack of awareness in society as I am, join the Left Print Army and let's fuck shit up. But on a personal level, if you see all of these traits, then I would explore getting a medical diagnosis to have the option of some sort of treatment and help. Because as we saw in Dr. Nigat's episode, these symptoms are going to change throughout not just our lifetime, but throughout our menstrual cycle. And it would be good to be clued up on that and potentially have support to prop yourself up in that, because I would really hate for anybody to get to that very dark and dangerous place that I got to. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. Yeah,
Okay,
I think it's. Yeah,
I think I lost my way somewhere, but
I absolutely think it does, and I think it's good advice throughout that safari. To be honest, that
and also and actually, what I would also say is, if you are not in a privileged position in which you can access a quick diagnosis, be that through private healthcare paying or be that through getting right to choose, lean into the community, lean into support. Because the thing is, as I've always said, nobody knows what it's like aboard the late diagnosis roller coaster except the other passengers, but there is actual evidence of the difference, the life-changing difference it makes to have peer support. So that's not just a plug for the ADHD AF community. Obviously, I'd love you to join us, but there are all kinds of support groups, both online on different online platforms and in-person meetups. Just reach out. Part of why I do the Most ADHD Thing post each week is so that people will talk to each other, because you don't want to feel like an alien. You don't want to feel like you're alone. Then within that, you can get advice and see how other people have dealt with it. But I think really, I just about to say something. I forgot what it was. Give me 1 second. You have to be educated. And unfortunately, you shouldn't have to fight. Like, that's what we're all trying to do here, is make the system accessible and to work in a timely and respectful manner. But unfortunately, it's likely you're going to have a fight on your hands. So arm yourself, educate yourself, get all of the research and go in there all guns blazing and fucking fight. And if you don't have the strength to fight, find people to help lift you up or to stand in your corner and help you fight too, because that's what you're going to need basically as things stand.
And I think you make a good point there about starting before you're in crisis as well.
Yeah.
Especially in places in the country where we do have a long wait, where there's long NHS lists if you can't afford to pay for it, and there's no right to choose. That to start before you're in crisis is really powerful. And I think I've just summed up what you said in about 6 words. And I think it is that informed is empowered, and to be supported is strength, is what I've written down.
Fucking hell. Why don't you just do this? Why have I got the podcast? I'm just rabbiting on bullshit like a chipmunk, and you've just mic dropped me in 1 second.
Because if I summarised like that, it would take about 10 minutes to do an entire episode. So there'd be no big long episodes, and folk would get really bored of one-liners. So, yeah.
So thank you, Ali, and thank you to community members that have put questions forward. I have to say, it is serendipitous and amazing that on this random day, it just so happens to be exactly 1 year since, Ali, you discovered that you have ADHD. That's right, isn't it?
It's pretty much right. I self-diagnosed at 17 or something and was told I was completely wrong and believed people.
Oh, yeah.
And then was told a year ago this week by a friend who spent the whole week trying to diagnose me, and I left incredibly angry and self-diagnosed and discovered Laura on the podcast.
Well, you wanted to prove her wrong, didn't you? So you started listening to the podcast, be like, fuck you, no, I'm not. And then you're like, oh shit, yeah, I am.
Yeah. Left Wales trying to prove her wrong. And by the time I hit the English-Scottish border, I was like, oh, she's got a point. Maybe I'm just not a fundamentally flawed human being. So a year ago today.
Massive congrats. So from that point, Ali literally bulldozed into the community, instated herself, and has now become not just part of the furniture, but you're part of the core team. Like, you're my support network in ADHD AF. So I guess what I want to ask you is, having come from the outside in, so as a listener and then a community member, I'd love to know the difference in the perception and as a friend and becoming an ADHD AF team member. Like, what do you see?
I think we see all the things that you've just spoken about to Nicole, which you do talk about publicly to some extent, but I think it's very easy, and I know we've spoken a bit about this recently, for people who only see you from the outside to only see the good stuff, to only see the person on the podcast interviewing cool people, to only see the person at the shows, who, for all you will talk about your struggles, they see the person that they hold up on a pedestal, and that you can be seen as somebody who is succeeding and has conquered their ADHD, for want of a better term, even though that is not what you put out publicly, and you try really hard not to do that. You can see how other people perceive it that way because they want to see the positive. So I think getting more involved, it becomes more and more obvious, like, the struggles that you still have.
ADHD AF. The amount of times I've been like, Ali, I can't do anything. How do I do this? Can you sort out my computer? Please, can you help me? And then I'm crying about complete bullshit. And I'm like, see, I do have ADHD.
Absolutely. And I think the imposter syndrome that you have about being sort of worthy and being able to ask for help, and the fact that there's people around who genuinely want to help you, and essentially going back to November, having to force the help on you and be like, I'm coming to do this. We're going to sort this shit out. Like, there's easier ways to do this. You cannot do this on your own. Seeing that and seeing the different experience of seeing your hopes and your fears for ADHD AF kind of up front, and kind of the stuff that you don't share publicly and the stuff that you share publicly but other people struggle to see because they want to see I don't want to use the word celebrity, but they see the person they see the person that is out there and is this public figure. And
I think that's it. I think it's very difficult. I think a lot of the time I've often felt like that I've been a bit lost in it, or the fact that I am actually disabled, that I really struggle, doesn't get seen. It's very, very difficult because I have had some very difficult times, and ADHD, the wrecking ball swung in and almost swept my life completely away, I can't go into detail about things because now it is public. It's not my place to put people's names from my life that I hope at some point things might be better with. Do you know what I mean? I can't go around saying this is my life and this and this and this. I'm treading a fine line between sharing your experiences to help others and not airing your dirty laundry in public. And that's not fair, and it's not safe to do. So it has been very, very tricky because quite often I can feel like I'm misunderstood. My enthusiasm and my spirit and my excitement, like, you know, I'm like a kid, right? I am, none of that is masking. It's not like, oh, she's pretending to be happy and actually she's really dark. I'm both. Like, that's who I am. I can go from really enthused, really confident and passionate about a thing. This is fucking happening. I'm making it happen, to literally close the blinds. I need to lie down and hide.
That we can change on a daily basis where we're at as well, or minute to minute, because when are we ever stable enough to just stay at acceptance? But I think it's interesting to look at like what acceptance is. And acceptance, when you look at the grief cycle, is that like it's accepting a new reality. I think with ADHD, it's often it's accepting our reality. And it doesn't mean that things need to, it's not a new reality. It doesn't mean things need to have changed massively. It's accepting what our reality looks like. And that might just let us let go of some of that self-hatred, or, well, there's a way out. And it just lets us let go of that. It takes some of the weight out of it, actually being able to have the acceptance for what our reality looks like.
What our reality looks like, or in other words, why we are like this. If you're finding this podcast helpful and you're in a position to do so, please join our Patreon peer support community via the link in the blurb of this episode. For unheard bonus and full interview video content and behind-the-scenes exclusives, including a next guest spoiler and first dibs and discounts on our handmade and ethically created merchandise and apparel, and live events tickets. Also blogs, vlogs, live community Zoom blethers, monthly advice from an ADHD coach, body doubling, and access to our Discord, filled with literally like-minded legends from all around the globe, including ourselves, who totally get it, who you can lean on, learn from, and blether with any time. Because the only people who know what it's like aboard the late ADHD diagnosis roller coaster are the other passengers. So, I've saved the best till last. I've got the person who has been with me through thick and thin, through all of this late diagnosed ADHD safari, the big man himself.
Hello there. How are you?
Yeah, fine. We don't have time for this, you know.
Do we not? Right.
So, what would you like to say?
I think when it all began and you were not diagnosed and not medicated, and there was a lot of anxiety, you know, there was so much going on in the world and everything else as well, but it was all, you know, there was a lot of grief, anxiety, depression, and that was for both of us as well to a degree. It was hard to watch, and then you were diagnosed, and after a while you got your meds. The change was massive. It was tangible. You could see. One day you woke up, I think, and you said, I don't feel that anxious anymore. Yeah. It was really interesting to see that. And so, yeah, from that point onwards, obviously then it's been it was almost like a reset to the grief cycle, wasn't it? Because then all of a sudden you've got to think about all the things that you've lost in your life and all the, you know, all the potential and everything else that happened and or hadn't happened because of this diagnosis. Shouldn't have happened. Yeah, all of those across the whole range of things.
We had the backdrop of a global pandemic. We had that.
We had
grief with, you know, losing my friend and all sorts.
There's all sorts. Moving was a huge one
during the pandemic.
New job. It's been a massive roller coaster. I keep wanting to say journey, but I can't, can I?
You can say safari.
Oh, I say safari. It's been a massive safari.
That's it. So the roller coaster is the cycle, because I don't think the grief cycle is linear or circular or whatever. It can just flip and change and up and down and round and round. So that's the roller coaster bit. And the safari is, you know, just plotting along like what's next, whereas the roller coaster is the feelings of anger, grief, depression.
That's what I've witnessed and tried to be a part of and support. And I mean, going from the start where, you know, you were really, really worried about putting stuff out there and
The start of the
everything,
podcast,
the start of the
you mean?
podcast, and the social media and everything else, putting stuff out there. You were so worried about upsetting people, like, the sort of the RSD would kick in immediately, but that was paired with justice sensitivity as well. So you knew there was something wrong and you wanted to shout about it, but you were held back by your sort of RSD that you were going to upset people or
It was a
offend people.
battle. Every post I did for the first 6 or 8 months was a battle. And that's every day.
Every day is the same battle, and that's largely changed. You can see a difference in you from maybe like even the first tours and the first episodes or early episodes where you were so much more sort of serious and angry. And you can tell that and hear it and sort of see it in you. You were sort of like a coiled spring.
I was so angry, but then at the same time, I was so acutely aware that nobody had ever taken me seriously and nobody was likely to take me seriously. So I think there was some kind of inbuilt thing that was like, speak with authority and try and be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And then I got lost in that because I'm really not very serious.
No, you're a Wally. Like me, you are a very funny, silly person. And it sounds really cheesy, but, we are always just being silly, really. And that's sort of, to see that much of a rage about things and get that, it was, it was sad to see. But you've worked your way through that and, you are still suitably angry about the situation.
Yeah.
And that means that you understand and you are driven to make change and improvement and help and get stuck in. Because that's the other part. I mean, a large part of you, not apart from being a silly Wally like me, you're also incredibly caring and so sort of, I want to say emphatic, but I think it's empathetic. That you take on everyone's problems around you because you want to solve, you want to troubleshoot, and you want to help. And that's really honourable. And an amazing thing that not everyone gets. I do believe, again, cheese alert, but I think you're one in a million, really, because so many people are willing to help or want to help, but there's an overriding sense of self-preservation, self-defense, fear of stepping up and doing something because they might get it wrong or it might hurt them. Like, there's all these things that people go, actually, I could help here, but I won't. Like seeing somebody who's fallen over in the street, people feel bad for somebody who's fallen over.
So I better look the other way.
I better look the other way so they don't feel embarrassed. Whereas it takes a lot for someone to go, are you okay? And that person will go, no, I'm fine, and get up and walk it off largely or whatever. But it's that person, there's not, I think they're in the minority and you're one of those, but I think you're one of those, but you're sort of a hyper level one of those. So you sort of really get stuck in extreme. No. But no, that's really special, but it's also detrimental because you can pour a lot of yourself out there and not get much back. And that's not saying that, everyone who listens and the community and your friends and your loved ones that like they do give back, and that's really important, but not perhaps sometimes to the same level that you pour out.
I think that one of the things that I've noticed over the course of these interviews, which each one was supposed to be about 5 minutes, I've done about 6 hours of recording.
Brilliant.
Is the difference that I can see is that I was working so hard this time last year and for many months that followed that I basically wasn't a person. Although I am still working very hard, I think I'm getting closer to that balance, and part of that is getting help.
Yeah.
Do you see the difference? Like, I know it's been it's not been an easy week for us. I did have a bit of a meltdown, so it feels weird to be saying this on reflection, but I think it's important to note that, because otherwise it looks like this whole episode is me going, look, I'm fixed now. And that's not the case. It's always going to be difficult, but it's about awareness, it's about support and improvement. And actually I can see how far I've come, definitely.
Yeah, no, you have. And when the sort of surface tension breaks and you just have to sort of pour out all of the things you want to say, that's when things get better.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I remember somebody asked me at one of that live recording in Aberdeen, and I was sort of flustered when I got the question, how do you deal with it? Are you ADHD and how do you deal with it? And I didn't answer very well. I'm always a bit, I lack confidence when I get put on a spot in public because I'm too tall.
You're a tart. Get on with it.
I'm a tart. But I sort of got all sweaty and nervous. But what I sort of wanted to say was, well, you don't cope with it. it's not something you just go, oh, this is the thing now, and I'm going to do everything I can to support that just naturally. That takes work, because we've all got our own things we struggle with and problems we have, and like I say, depression, other things like that can hit you pretty hard sometimes out of the blue for no good reason. Any human being, myself included, will go, oh my God, like, why is this a thing now? And that then takes in a reflection, and you have to think, oh, okay, no, this has happened because of this, and this is what that is, and you need to kind of call yourself back in and kind of show that compassion again, and realize and just kind of pick up where you left off if you have slipped into a moment of, oh God, it's too much, or whatever. And the breakdowns and the kind of the kickoffs and stuff, the arguments that happen, or the chats or the discussions or whatever you want to call them, because they are of all varieties, they're a reset button. And you walk away, you might walk away feeling sad or upset or angry or whatever, but shortly afterwards you go, yeah, no, that's right, actually, and this has been said, and that's correct.
I think it's quite funny, because actually, I don't know how much of this we'll use or not, but actually, like, it's interesting, because one of the main thing that sort of came out of my meltdown was that I wanted you to help me.
Yeah.
And I hadn't actually ever asked you that.
No.
And I hadn't actually realised how annoyed I was that you weren't.
Yeah, yeah.
I just hadn't.
Yeah.
I'd just got on and felt that I had to. And actually, it's the most obvious thing in the world. Yeah, and
you sort of take roles, I think, in any relationship, you take roles for granted somewhat. So you settle into your roles of what you do. I'll go out and do that, and you go and do that, and it's a balance, and you strike that balance, and things are nice and peaceful. But then when you add things onto that, onto that balance, it tilts the other way. And maybe one person, myself, would see that, but also go, "Well, no, that's okay. She got it under control. It's happening. Things are happening. It's fine." And there's also an element of like, I don't want to ride in and be the white knight, and I'm going to save the day, because that's bullshit. It's but it's not about that. It is about realizing that, or recognizing that there is a shared responsibility here.
Yeah.
This is our life. This isn't something that you do as a hobby.
Yeah.
This is your purpose. It's your purpose. Yeah, exactly. And that's how our life sort of goes.
And how do you feel about that?
I see so much value and reward and benefit for you and for everybody involved, and for others who may not know about it yet, but it's there, and there's so much more to be done.
Plant the seeds for trees in which shade you shall never sit.
That's the saying, exactly. You've got a really good support network around you. It is still difficult. There are still challenges that come our way, and there are times where I feel things need to change and get better. In
terms of what?
In terms of everything. In terms of how ADHD is perceived, out there in the wide world, to how you are, getting on here at home with things and how things impact you. And, but that again, to get those things better, it's about supporting and understanding, communicating it, and figuring out ways in which to do that. And as I say, that's where the hard work is. I think a lot of it also comes down to just realizing that, I love you, and we're in love, and no matter what happens and what comes our way, we are us. We are a unit, and you've got to be.
You're a fucking unit.
You're a fucking unit. That's all that matters at the end of the day. So what you leave behind, which is what you're building now, what we're building now.
Yeah.
And everyone else who's involved, and everyone else who's listening, and everyone else who's just talking about it. That's a thing. It's being built. That's important. These are the seeds of the trees we may not feel the shade of, but others hopefully will. So, generations to come.
Are you happy that ADHD AF came into our lives and that it's taken over our lives?
Yes.
Yay.
Yes, I am very happy.
Good.
I think it's amazing. How did
you feel as it started to rise, and then next thing you know, I've gone from not moving off the sofa for 2 years to going on 2 tours in a year?
The logical side of me was like, this is insane. What the hell's going on? This is bonkers. But then the sort of the creative, side of me, and the sort of more what's the word,
YOLO
side was like, yeah, fucking do it, this is great, like this is what life's about, and you should crack on and do it.
And it's weird because sometimes you'll come home from work and you'll be like, I met a person today who listens to your podcast.
Yeah, that's crazy. People who know the podcast, who know you, like your
you'll be
voice.
Like, yeah, that's my wife and I'm big.
That's my wife and I'm big. Yeah. It's it's been nuts, and it's so cool that it's happened, and we met so many amazing people. I would like to ask you where you think you are now on the diagnosis roller coaster.
I can honestly say that I am absolutely at acceptance.
Wow.
And I think that the issue is my perception of what acceptance looks like is what's shifted. So I think in my head, so I remember asking Louise Pink Pear Bear Williams, like she said, she was 2 years diagnosed, and she said, yeah, I'm at acceptance. I remember being like, bloody hell, the promised land, like it exists. In my head, acceptance was, I've got ADHD and I'm going to click my heels together with glee.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that you are accepting that you're always going to have it. You're accepting a new way of viewing yourself, a new way of supporting yourself, a new way of communicating, a new way of thinking. Now, this time last year, I was really struggling with RSD. We'd been away at Christmas and somebody had said something, it upset me for a couple of days. I was ruminating. And then I realised that it was bullshit and it was RSD. And then I got upset about the fact that I have RSD. So basically it was like a resistance to the acceptance. It was like I felt the injustice of having this affliction, if that makes sense. But now I 100% accept that I've got it.
Yeah.
And things have got better. I think things will continue to get better. But then some days they fucking won't.
Yeah.
Because that's ADHD and that's hormones and that's whatever life that throws at you. You know, I fully accept that I have it. I fully accept the diagnosis. I fully accept that I need treatment. I fully accept that it's going to take daily work and keeping myself in check. And when I want to just lash out or do something impulsively, trying to step back and take a moment and assess whether it's real or not. And that doesn't mean I'm always going to get it right.
No.
But I accept that that's my life's lot. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's my responsibility to look after myself and to try and manage my symptoms as best I can for myself, but also for the people in my life, because that impacts you.
Yes.
That impacts friends and family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I am at acceptance. It's just that acceptance doesn't mean I've won ADHD and I get a prize and that's me. I've cured it. I've fixed it. I'm done. It means I really do accept it.
It's good.
Thank you for everything, darling. There would not be an ADHD AF without you. We soldier on.
Yeah, we do soldier on. It's tough, isn't it? I want to talk about it.
Go on, talk some more then. I can cut it up. Say what you need to say.
No, I want to talk about the exciting things that are coming our way. But
well,
I can't, can I?
Soon come. The pilot is driving the ship out of the harbour.
Toot, toot.
Right, come on, this is nonsense. Come on.
Bye.
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 So it is 10 to 9. We're probably far too late into body doubling as it is, but I figured as we were all here, I might as well hit record. Say good morning, everybody, body doubling team.
Morning.
Morning.
So there are 10 of us this morning. We were just talking a minute ago about how Tracy has managed to advocate for herself and finally get HRT, and it's been a battle.
I have been backwards and forwards to the doctors since December. They've told me that I was too young to have HRT at 43 and 10 months. I had to be over 45 to get it without blood tests and things like that. They put me on antidepressants, which led me to ending up in hospital. The community have been amazing. They've sent me stuff that I could send to the doctors. They've sent me letters that I can send to the doctors. Eventually, after 4 different phone calls with 3 different doctors, I got my HRT on Friday, so I can start that next week.
So happy for you.
I wouldn't have got there without knowing the stuff that Laura's put out on the podcast, because I wouldn't have known that I could go and fight for it myself.
But that's the same for me. I wouldn't have known anything about this whole kind of perimenopause thing if it wasn't, well, for guests on the podcast, but then speaking in the community, because it was the likes of Kim that was saying to me, I said, oh, it's good, they've listened to me, I'm going to have a blood test. And everyone's like, blood test. Kim's like, that doesn't matter. This is what you need. And that has all come from the community. That's not come from any doctor. So I'm so glad that for that, Trace. I'm sorry you've had such a fight. And just, it's outrageous that you ended up in hospital. So bad.
Basically, they put me on antidepressants, which had a reaction to my ADHD medication. I ended up, it was a migraine, but because I phoned 111 for advice, they thought I was having a stroke. So it was just a caution. So they took me off in an ambulance to hospital. Absolutely fine. There was nothing wrong. My blood pressure was up because I'm on stimulant medication. And I couldn't talk because I had migraine. So it was just, it wasn't anything bad, but it was, I shouldn't have been put on antidepressants in the first place. Hopefully we'll, I won't need to take them and the HRT will work.
Yay, what a victory. Romana, did you want to say anything before you go to work?
I was back and forward to the doctors for an actual year. I was discharged from CAMS at 18 and pretty much every single year have been to the doctors saying that something's not right, and I've just been given antidepressants or told that I'm not suicidal enough. And I've had to keep going back, and now...
How can you ever say enough after the word suicidal? It's just the most appalling thing ever.
I was told that because I didn't have a set out plan, that I didn't meet the criteria to get on the list for help just now and go away and take antidepressants, when I'd actually had a really bad experience with them when I was younger. So that was obviously quite triggering, quite an anxious experience to go back onto them after that scare before. So yes, I have my assessment, I believe, on the 13th. A little bit apprehensive with doing it through the NHS because I don't know how long that whole process is going to be, but hopefully I can get my finger out my, I'm trying not to swear, finger out my bum and
you like
finger out my fucking ass and actually do the forms. So thank God for body doubling so that you guys can get me through doing my forms pretty much.
Oh, so happy for you, Romana. I'm so sorry it's been such a fight, but so happy for you.
I've not been alone in it. That's been the most important thing, so thank you, everyone.
Go bloody team, go team. Kim, did you want to say anything?
I would just say that anybody that's going through late diagnosis and is in early stages of perimenopause, just really, there's lots and lots of resources, and Laura's done a really good job. But don't forget also, I've mentioned it earlier on our body doubling, but there's something called the HRT prepayment certificate, the PPC. I looked it up. So if you are in an area where you are being told you can have HRT, but you are being told you have to pay for it, you can log on to the gov.uk website and look up HRT prescription payment certificate. You pay £21 and you don't then have to continue to pay for your HRT for the rest of the year. So I've been on HRT for a couple of years now, and it's cost me £20 every 3 months just to get my prescription. Now I've paid for that. I'm not paying for my HRT and I'm not paying for my iron tablets either, because this prescription seems to cover everything. So, and again, that is just information that's not reaching people.
How did you find that out?
Through Dr. Newson's website, Dr. Louise Newson. She's an amazing advocate for menopause. Louise gets really cross about it and saying, you don't need a blood test. And I think Dr. Nagat said it really well. No one knows you better than you.
Yeah.
If you've got symptoms, and there's 35 symptoms, everybody thinks it's heat and it's sweats. It can be frozen shoulder, menopause, restless legs, menopause. So, we're not just talking about those mega big top hits. There are 35 common symptoms.
Yeah.
So don't get just drawn down to the flushes. The depression and anxiety and loneliness, that's my big one. I got really lonely despite having masses of people around me. It was an internal loneliness. So I'm big on this midlife changes.
Thank you for everything that you do in the community with the self-care
sessions. Thank you for all that you do.
Kristen is in Melbourne.
Hello. I actually also have recently had my anniversary. It was a 1-year anniversary on about the 30th of December.
Yay! And how do you feel now, a year later?
It's so crazy how much you can change inside with no visible difference on the outside.
Oh my God,
how much, learning you've done and how much work you've done to try and figure out all the things that you thought were quirks of personality or just flaws. Figured it out. You go, actually.
Do you mean, hang on, can I just interject? Do you mean now that you know why you are like this.
Yes, exactly. I was wondering why am I like this, and now I know.
What has helped you the most, do you think, in your change, the change that you see in yourself and the acceptance in this last year?
Massively decreasing the amount of shame that I'm trying to work through, and not feel the shame and just be more accepting. But at the same time, also in doing more acceptance, it's also, and working with you and our wonderful community has led to more self-advocacy. Neurodiversity is still a long way to appear platforms, but thanks to your wonderful community, I'm all about finding things and pushing for it now. So,
well, thank you for everything. Thank you for cooking your dinner while the rest of us are eating breakfast. It's always a joy. Thank you for all you do. Nikki, did you want on?
I'm nearly at my 2-year anniversary. Mine's next month, so we're quite close in that. And getting diagnosed has been kind of like a defining point in my life. And yet where I am now, 2 years on, probably my mental health's probably in one of the worst places it's been maybe ever. And it's strange because it's not because of the diagnosis, but that has played a massive role in it, I think. I do think that I probably need to be speaking to my doctor about perimenopause and HRT, but I don't quite have the mental capacity to do that right now, so it's kind of on a back burner. And I know that seems counterintuitive, because if I did speak to somebody it could help, but I'm not quite ready for it yet.
I'm sorry to hear that. I guess the whole meds shortage didn't help matters, right?
It didn't, no. So that, I think, I've been in burnout for probably over a year now. I think the first year of my diagnosis was kind of, for me, quite amazing, and I suddenly was able to get rid of a lot of shame, and I kind of felt a sense of purpose. But then I pushed myself too hard, so I started on the meds. I was like, yes, my life, it's better now, this is where it all goes up. And I pushed myself way too hard, and I'm crashed after Christmas year before, and just haven't really recovered from that. For me, I think having this group and this community, this has been kind of a massive game changer for me. I think if I didn't have you guys, then I would be in a much worse place than I am. And you guys have kind of helped me to understand that, you know what, it's okay not to be okay. Just accept that. So instead of being angry at myself or angry at the world or whatever, I'm just like, this is where I am. It's shit, but I will get through it. And until then, I've got a place where I can come and be safe and talk to people that get it. So
you're not alone in it at all. I'm honestly not paying any of you to say these things. You can't see because there's no video, but I could be holding a script like, yay, the community, join us. No, in all seriousness, I'm so glad that you feel that and that you have that support, because the thing is, the times they are changing every day. You know, we're all plodding along and things will change. At some point, you'll look back on this difficult time and it'll feel a lifetime away, and we're all here together. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all you do. Jill, did you want to say anything?
This group, like being part of this community, it's just helped me so much. I was undiagnosed until just before my 31st birthday. I just had my first anniversary in October.
Yay. How did you feel a year on? What's the difference that you see?
More confidence, more understanding.
Why you are like this?
I met some amazing people, and of course it's not all roses. You have the horrible thoughts of what could have been if I'd been diagnosed in childhood.
You know what you were saying there, Jill, about like, you know, what your life could have been. When I took my mum the other day to try and help me advocate, and my mum said to the psychiatrist that I'm not a kick in the ass off of 30 and I've not had a chance to start living my life yet. And she's so right. You know, I have been held back with things like anxiety and OCD and stuff like that because of undiagnosed ADHD, and a lot of us haven't had the chance to fully live our lives and be fully involved in friendships, work, relationships and things, because we've had all these symptoms and comorbidities that it is hard sometimes to reflect and be like, what would life have been? You know, what would have happened if I would have been able to stay in school because I wasn't losing my mind, you know, and all those things. If I was able to stay in a job longer than 6 months to a year without the imposter syndrome, like killing me, you know.
Yeah.
How would my finances be if I could live in a flat longer than a year because I just get itchy feet and be like, I have to move again?
You're so right. You're so right. The thing is as well, it's like you have to go through that. You have to. It's a grieving process. It is a new chapter. It is a start. I was just about to start singing Natasha Bedingfield, and I know what will happen if I do that. Shill's going to start slap dropping. But she goes, but it's a new chapter. We do all have to come to terms with it. We are all going to have it the rest of our lives, but to be armed with the knowledge, the start of not just a new chapter, but a new life, really.
We're just kind of finding out about this. Neurodivergent people living in a neurotypical world, and there's so little awareness.
The good thing is we are all in the trenches together, and actually, like, I think if anything, recording this episode, which has turned into a beast of 2 episodes, has shown me anything, is that like you really don't realise what a difference a year can make. So like you're a year in, and a year from now life could look and feel very different. And also in terms of like, for example, the previous episode with Dr. Nigat and that research, again, that evidence is nothing that we didn't already know, but it does show that we're moving forward. It does show that change is coming. So it might only be a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, but we are going in the right direction. And who knows where we'll all be a year from now. And that's really exciting.
Exactly.
We're going to be thriving.
Thriving! Absolutely thriving. Romana managed to get us Girls Aloud tickets, and it's the most exciting part of my year. I cannot wait to see Girls Aloud.
No idea. Oh, you guys, just wait. Just you wait.
Are Girls Aloud ready for us? That is the question, to be honest.
That is the question.
Right. Thank you for being part of this community. What a lovely way to start on Monday. Big love to you all.
Do.
See you later.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy Monday.
And on occasions such as this, impulsivity can sometimes be a positive and end up in something really wonderful, like hearing from these absolute legends that I have the pleasure and honour of speaking to every morning in the community. And I haven't done that for it to be a plug. Obviously, I would love you to join us. If you are unable to join the membership, it is a paid for service, as I've said before. There are loads of free online support groups, so please don't think that you are alone. There are all sorts of like-minded legends out there. Have a look at the resources on ADHDasfemales.com. There's a link in the blurb of this episode, because peer support is invaluable. Horse's mouth stuff. I didn't actually have a script, and there are free Discord servers, there are Facebook groups. Hopefully there are local community groups that you can join for in-person meetups if that's something that you like, because together we are so much stronger and we can arm each other with knowledge. We can support each other, body double, to get the hard shit done. So thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate your support. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit those stars, write a little review, a nice one, please. Answer the Q&As on whatever it's called, Spotify. That all of it helps get the message out there. By interacting with this podcast, with the platform ADHD AF podcast, you are helping to raise ADHD awareness and helping unite us all of us aliens, to find each other. So I really, really appreciate all of your support. I really do know how lucky I am. It doesn't sometimes feel like luck to be diagnosed at 38, having nearly lost my life, but I know that I am. I know how difficult it is to obtain diagnosis and treatment, and that's really, honestly, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. I do want everyone to know that self-diagnosis is valid. So I just have one final point to make, and I really have to say it. I'm so sorry. But it really does make all the difference when you finally get the answer to that question. Why am I like this? Seriously.